Will you pray with me? Gracious God, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be acceptable to you, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. A lush green fir stands in a forest of stark, bare branches. A loud candle glows in a darkened window on a cold night. A prophet speaks words of promise and possibility into a world on the edge of despair. A child quickens in the womb of one who believed motherhood was impossible. These are the signs and stories of Advent. They each tell us something about this strange and mysterious season. But none are as powerful as the force which lies beneath them all: hope. Hope is such a small word, such an unassuming word. The poet Emily Dickinson once wrote, "Hope is a thing with feathers that perches on the soul." But don't let that delicate description fool you, because hope is made of stronger stuff. It is not the same as optimism, which marries positivity with just a sprinkling of evidence. And hope is not wishful thinking, which is more of a projection of what we want to happen, a kind of protective self-delusion. No, the thing that sets hope apart is that it comes through when there's absolutely no reason to expect it. When we cannot see the path in front of us, but we keep showing up to walk it. Archbishop Desmond Tutu, a man who knew something about the tragedies and struggles of life, once said, "I have never been an optimist, but I am a prisoner of hope." I think I know what he means. You see, hope captures us. It is tenacious and fierce. It's rooted in an audacious trust that there is a force for good in this universe that is larger and more powerful and more lasting than any force in the world that we know of. Hope is not a fleeting thing. It's woven deeply into our identity as children of God, because we are connected to a larger story, God's story. It is deep in our spiritual DNA, this story, one we've inherited from our ancestors and will pass on to our children. It tells us, in hope, we reach for each other. In hope, we hold on. Because no matter what chapter we are in, hope never lets the story die. But we do have a term for life without hope: despair. It's another modest word, but far more insidious and dangerous than it sounds. When I was a child, my favorite book series was Anne of Green Gables. In fact, my mother named me Anne after this character, although she left off the E, which for those of you in the know is a cause for heartbreak of epic proportions. You see, Anne with an E was an 11-year-old orphan, reluctantly adopted by an elderly brother and sister pair in rural Prince Edward Island. Now, imagine this. She had a flair for drama and an outsized imagination and a penchant for big emotional declarations. One morning, upset about possibly going back to the orphanage, Anne dramatically tells her potential adoptive mother, Marilla, that she is in the depths of despair. And then she asks Marilla if she's ever been overcome by the same feeling. Now, Marilla is a rather stoic and pragmatic person. And she looks at Anne and she calmly says, "No, I have not. Because to be in the depths of despair is to turn your back against God." Now, that's a pretty profound thought for an 11-year-old to take in. But that one line has stuck with me more than any line in the book. To despair is to turn your back against God. You see, what makes despair so dangerous is that it can sneak up on us disguised as something else. We might call it realism or pessimism, perhaps depression or cynicism. We look around at our lives or the world and all that is wrong, and we come to believe that nothing can change and nothing that we do matters. Or most dangerous at all, we come to believe that we don't matter. Because what despair really does is it detaches us from God's story. It doesn't deny the story or deny the truth of God directly, but it says, whatever the truth is, or whatever the story may be, there is nothing in it for us. Advent is a season where we proclaim that the story of God, the one that the prophet shouted out in the wilderness, the one that kept the Israelites going for 40 years in the wilderness, the one that Mary heard when her child first leapt in her womb, the one that inspired Jesus' followers to grow stronger in the midst of persecution, that story has inspired every movement of human liberation and flourishing. And it is God's story. And it has everything to do with us. Because to be human is to share in it. You see, to be human is to suffer, to experience injustice and tragedy and pain. There is no life that can escape that. But it is in that struggle that we develop the spiritual muscles for hope. It is the fire where our hope is forged. The poet Wendell Berry reminds us of this. Hope is what sustains us when the stories we feel connected to turn unjust. And then we find the courage to speak out against them, to fight and to stand against them, he says. Like every generation before us, we live in a time steeped in injustice. And we turn to the words of the prophets, like the words of Isaiah we were hearing this morning, because they can envision and lean into another future. They give us a glimpse of the dream of God and the courage to make it a reality. But Barry warns us that we cannot expect a quick, visible improvement and then fall into despair when it doesn't come fast enough for us. Change that endures depends on hearts that are grounded in hope. Because courage, like love, is nourished by hope. To live a life of hope, to be, as Tutu described, a prisoner of hope, is not only about changing what is wrong in the world, but more importantly, about not letting what is wrong in the world change us. And so each year, as the world gets darker and colder, and the signs of life and light seem nowhere to be found, we tell these stories of hope again and again. Stories that remind us of who we are and who God is. And we celebrate the symbols and traditions that keep us connected to it. Because it is bigger than any faith. It's bigger and more lasting than any tribe or tradition. It's more powerful than any movement we can march in. It kindles us with a fierce and tenacious hope, like the lone evergreen in the bare forest, and the single light that will overcome the darkness, the cry of a newborn baby into a world on the brink of despair. Hope tells us God's story will always go on. May it be so. Amen.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.